I introduced them. I trusted both of them. And still, I was the one who apologized. Funny how you can build your entire life on what you think is solid ground, only to discover it was sand all along. I'm an architect, I should have known better. No structure survives on a compromised foundation. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. My name is Ethan Voss. I'm 37, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. A successful career designing buildings that would outlast me, a marriage I believed was as sturdy as concrete, and a social circle small but dependable, like well-placed support beams. I've always been the planner, the one who sees 10 steps ahead while others live moment to moment. I guess that was part of the problem. It started 3 years ago when we met Marcus and his wife at a charity fundraiser for sustainable urban development. I remember the evening clearly. The venue was an old warehouse converted into an event space, one of my early renovation projects. Amelia, my wife, wore a deep blue dress that complemented her eyes, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders. She had a way of commanding attention without demanding it, a natural charisma that drew people to her like gravity. "You should meet Marcus," she said, tugging me away from a conversation with a potential client about load-bearing walls and energy efficiency. "He's in real estate development. You two speak the same language." That was Amelia, always connecting people, always building bridges. At 35, she was the perfect counterbalance to my methodical nature. Where I was reserved, she was expressive. Where I calculated, she felt. She maintained our friendships like precious gardens while I drafted blueprints for our future. Marcus Hale stood by the bar, tall and confident, with the easy smile of someone used to getting what he wanted. Beside him was Lila, a petite woman with kind eyes and a gentle laugh. They made an attractive couple, polished, successful, seemingly happy. "Marcus, Lila, this is my husband, Ethan," Amelia said with that proud smile she always had when introducing me. "Ethan, meet Marcus and Lila Hale." Marcus's handshake was firm, his gaze direct. The architect behind this transformation. "I've been wanting to meet you. This space is incredible." "Thanks," I replied, feeling that subtle pride that comes when someone appreciates your vision made real. "It's all about seeing what could be, not just what is." "That's exactly what I tell my investors," Marcus said, and just like that, we were deep in conversation about property values, urban renewal, and the future of the city. Lila and Amelia hit it off immediately too, discovering they had attended the same college a few years apart. By the end of the evening, phone numbers were exchanged, and plans for dinner were made. Just like that, the Hales became part of our lives. Over the next 2 years, our friendship with them grew. Weekend barbecues, holiday celebrations, even a couple of vacation trips to a beachside resort. Marcus and I would talk business while Amelia and Lila chatted about everything from books to local politics. It felt right, comfortable, balanced. During this time, I was becoming increasingly focused on what I considered my masterpiece, designing our forever home. Amelia and I had purchased land overlooking a lake just outside the city. The property had everything: natural beauty, privacy, and the perfect canvas for the home I'd been mentally designing since architectural school. While most of my work involved commercial spaces and urban planning, this was personal, intimate even. Every angle, every window placement, every material choice was deliberate. This wasn't just a house, it was a physical manifestation of our future together. I spent evenings at the drafting table in our apartment's spare room, adjusting plans, calculating costs, visualizing how the light would move through the spaces throughout the day. I wanted everything to be perfect. In hindsight, perhaps I became too absorbed in building a future and forgot to live in the present. Amelia would bring me coffee, peek over my shoulder, and make suggestions. More windows in the bedroom, or could the kitchen open more to the living area? I'd incorporate her ideas, pleased that she was engaged in the process. But I missed the signs that she was feeling left behind as I pushed forward. "You're living in that house already, aren't you?" she asked one night, standing in the doorway of my home office. Meanwhile, I'm still here, in the real world, wondering where my husband went. I looked up from my sketches, surprised by the edge in her voice. "I'm doing this for us, Amelia. This is our future." "And what about our present?" she asked, but then smiled and shook her head. Never mind. The Hales invited us to their lake house this weekend. I told them we'd go. You need a break from all this planning. I almost declined. There were contractor meetings to schedule, material samples to review. But the look in her eyes, something between pleading and resignation, made me close my laptop. Sounds great. It'll be good to get away. That weekend at the Hales Lake House marked the beginning of the end, though I wouldn't recognize it until months later. It was early summer, the weather perfect for boating and barbecues. The house was impressive modern, with expansive glass walls that brought the lake view inside. Marcus gave me a tour, pointing out architectural details he thought I'd appreciate. You should see what Ethan's designing for us, Amelia told them over dinner on the deck. It's going to make this place look like a cottage. She exaggerates, I said, though secretly pleased by her praise. I doubt it, Marcus replied, raising his glass. To future homes and lasting friendships. We all clinked glasses, and I felt that warm certainty that comes from having good friends and solid plans. But looking back now, I realize I missed so much in that moment, the way Marcus's hand lingered on Amelia's when he passed her the salad, how his eyes followed her when she walked to the kitchen, the slight tension in Lila's smile when her husband complimented my wife's dress. The next day, we took Marcus's boat out on the lake. The sun was high, the water a deep blue that reminded me of Amelia's dress the night we met the Hales. Marcus was at the helm, Lila beside him. Amelia and I sat at the back, enjoying the spray and sunshine. I'll get drinks, Marcus announced after anchoring in a quiet cove. As he moved around the boat, I noticed he always seemed to end up next to Amelia, offering her a beverage, brushing against her shoulder as he passed, laughing too enthusiastically at her jokes. It registered as odd but not alarming. After all, we were friends, and Marcus was naturally charming with everyone. That evening, after a day on the water and a sunset dinner on the deck, Lila disappeared inside. I found her later, sitting alone on the screen porch, her eyes red. Everything okay? I asked, concerned by her unusual solemnity. She wiped quickly at her eyes. Just tired. Long day in the sun. But something in her gaze spoke of a deeper hurt, a knowledge she wasn't ready to share. I sat with her for a while in companionable silence, watching the moonlight on the lake. You're a good man, Ethan, she said suddenly. Amelia is lucky to have you. Before I could respond, Marcus appeared in the doorway. There you are, he said to his wife, his tone light but his eyes slightly narrowed. Amelia's looking for cards. Game night? The moment passed, and we returned to the laughter and friendship of the weekend. But driving home on Sunday, I felt an uneasiness I couldn't quite name. Amelia was unusually quiet, staring out the passenger window. Did you have a good time? I asked. Oh, yes. It was nice to get away. She turned to me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Are you heading straight back to work on the house plans tomorrow? I have a meeting with the contractor, but I was thinking we could go to dinner afterward. That new place you've been wanting to try? Her face brightened genuinely then. I'd like that. For a few weeks after the lake house trip, things between us seemed to improve. I made a conscious effort to be more present, fewer late nights at the drafting table, more evenings spent with Amelia. The foundation for our new home was poured, and construction began in earnest. Seeing the physical manifestation of my plans was exhilarating, and Amelia seemed excited too, visiting the site regularly and discussing furnishings and landscaping. The Hales remained fixtures in our lives. Dinner parties, movie nights, weekends at their lake house. But something had shifted subtly in our group dynamic. Lila became quieter, more withdrawn. Marcus grew more animated around Amelia, his attention to her more obvious. And Amelia, my charismatic, social butterfly wife, seemed to bloom under his attention in a way that felt both familiar and strange. Still, I trusted her completely. I trusted him as a friend. And I was too focused on our future home, on creating the perfect setting for our life together, to see what was happening right in front of me. Until the day I did. It was a Tuesday in late August. Construction on our house was progressing well, and I had spent the morning at the site before returning home to work from our apartment. Amelia had a standing lunch date with friends, so I expected to have the place to myself until evening. I was at my desk when I heard the front door open and close, followed by the sound of Amelia's heels on the hardwood floor. "Back already?" I called out. "Lunch got cancelled," she replied, appearing in the doorway. "I'm going to take a shower and then catch up on some reading." She looked flushed, her hair slightly windblown, a breathlessness to her that I attributed to her rushing home. She disappeared into our bedroom, and moments later, I heard the shower running. I returned to my work, but realized I needed a document I'd left on our bedside table. Entering the bedroom, I noticed Amelia's phone on the dresser, plugged into the charger. As I passed, it lit up with a notification. I'm not the type to check my wife's phone. I never had been. But something, call it intuition or fate, made me glance down at the screen. A photo message from Marcus, partially visible on the lock screen, that night under the stars, thinking of it now. The world stopped. Just for a moment. Everything froze, and in that crystallized second, I knew. I knew with cold, absolute certainty what had been happening right under my nose. With hands steadier than they had any right to be, I picked up Amelia's phone. She used my birthday as her passcode, always had. The phone unlocked, and I opened the message thread with Marcus. What I saw confirmed everything. Months of messages. Photos. Plans to meet. Terms of endearment that had never been meant for me to see. References to their time together at the lake house, in hotel rooms, even in our apartment when I was at construction meetings. The shower was still running. Steam crept under the bathroom door. I quickly took screenshots, emailed them to myself, and returned the phone exactly as I had found it. Then I walked out of the apartment, got in my car, and drove. I didn't have a destination in mind, but I found myself at the lake near our construction site, our forever home that now felt like joke. I parked and sat there, staring at the water, for hours. The sun moved across the sky. Shadows lengthened. And I tried to understand how everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and my friendships could have been so completely, devastatingly wrong. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat, feeling the foundation of my life crumble beneath me, wondering how I had missed the signs that it was built on sand all along. The dashboard clock read 8:37 p.m. when I finally turned the key in the ignition again. I had sat by that lake for nearly 5 hours, watching the sun arc across the sky and eventually sink below the tree line, painting everything in fading amber light. My phone had buzzed several times, text messages from Amelia asking where I was, if I would be home for dinner. I left them unanswered. What could I possibly say? Sorry, I'm busy processing the complete collapse of our marriage. The drive home felt surreal, like navigating through someone else's life. Street lights blurred past, and the radio played music that registered as nothing more than distant noise. My mind kept returning to those messages, analyzing every word, every photo, searching for some explanation that could make this less devastating. There was none. When I arrived at our apartment building, I sat in the parking garage for another 20 minutes, rehearsing what I would say, how I would act. Should I confront her immediately? Pretend I knew nothing while gathering more evidence? Leave without explanation? Each option seemed simultaneously right and wrong. Eventually, I made my way upstairs. Amelia was curled up on the couch, a book in her lap that I doubted she had actually been reading. She looked up when I entered, relief washing over her face. "There you are," she said, setting aside her book. "I was worried. You didn't answer any of my texts." "Sorry," I replied, amazed at how normal my voice sounded. "My phone died. I went to check on the construction and lost track of time." "For 6 hours?" Her tone held concern rather than suspicion. I shrugged, hanging my jacket by the door. The contractor had some questions about the master bathroom layout. We ended up going through several options. "You could have called from his phone," she said, but then smiled. "I made pasta. There's a plate for you in the microwave." "Thanks, but I grabbed something earlier." The thought of eating anything made my stomach turn. Amelia studied me for a moment. "Is everything okay? You seem distant." I looked at my wife, this woman I had loved for 7 years, who I thought I knew better than anyone, and wondered how many lies had passed between us. How many times had she sat on that very couch, texting Marcus while I worked in the next room? How many lunch dates with friends had actually been rendezvous with him? Just tired, I said, heading toward the bathroom. Think I'll take a shower and turn in early. Under the hot spray of the shower, I pressed my forehead against the cool tile and allowed myself a moment of weakness. My chest felt hollow, as though something essential had been scooped out, leaving nothing but an aching void. It wasn't just the betrayal of intimacy, it was the calculated deception, the stolen moments, the rewriting of our shared reality. Later, lying in bed beside Amelia, I felt the insurmountable distance between us. She reached for me in the darkness, her hand finding mine on top of the covers. "You've been working so hard on the house," she whispered. "It's going to be beautiful." The irony nearly broke me. Here she was, speaking of our future home while actively destroying its foundation. I murmured something noncommittal and pretended to fall asleep, listening to her breathing even out beside me. Morning came with no clarity. I rose early, telling Amelia I had a breakfast meeting with a client. Instead, I drove to a coffee shop across town and ordered a black coffee that grew cold as I stared out the window. My phone contained all the evidence of her betrayal, screenshots that I had now studied like sacred texts, searching for meaning in the desecration. One message from Amelia to Marcus stood out: "He is completely absorbed in the house. Sometimes I think he's building a beautiful cage for us." The words stung with their kernel of truth. Had I been so focused on creating our perfect future that I neglected our present? Did that justify what they'd done? No. The answer came with surprising force. Nothing justified this level of betrayal. After hours of internal debate, I decided my next move. Not Amelia, not yet. First, I needed to talk to Lila. The sadness in her eyes at the lake house, her tears, she knew. She had known while I remained oblivious. I texted her, "Need to talk. Important. Can we meet this afternoon? Just us." Her reply came quickly: "Levin Wine Bar. 2 p.m. The wine bar was dimly lit despite the afternoon sun outside, half empty as most people were still at work. Lila arrived precisely at 2, looking smaller somehow, fragile in a way I hadn't noticed before. She spotted me at a corner table and walked over, no smile of greeting, just a knowing resignation in her eyes. "You found out," she said as she slid into the chair across from me. Not a question. "Yesterday," I confirmed, pushing a glass of white wine toward her. I had ordered it when I arrived, remembering it was her preference. "How long have you known?" Lila took a long sip before answering. "I suspected for months. Found proof about 3 weeks ago. Why didn't you tell me?" The question emerged more plaintive than I intended. She looked down at her hands, slender fingers tracing patterns on the stem of her glass. "Because I thought maybe." She paused, her voice barely audible above the soft jazz playing in the background. "I thought maybe we'd end up betraying them too." The admission hung between us, and I felt the pull she described, not desire exactly, but a recognition of shared pain, a dangerous understanding that could easily evolve into something else. We were the abandoned ones, the discarded spouses. There was comfort in not being alone in that knowledge. "I almost called you so many times," she continued. "But then I thought, what good would it do? Would knowing earlier have hurt less?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I would have preferred the truth." "Truth," she repeated, a bitter smile crossing her lips. "Marcus has never been particularly concerned with that concept." "I suppose Amelia wasn't either." "What are you going to do?" I asked, realizing I genuinely wanted to know. Perhaps her plan could illuminate my own path forward. "I've consulted a lawyer," she said, straightening her shoulders. "I've documented everything. And I've moved most of our savings into an account he can't access." She met my eyes directly. "I'm leaving him, Ethan. I deserve better than this." "So do you." Her certainty was enviable. I still felt adrift, unmoored from the future I had so carefully designed. "Have you confronted him?" I asked. She shook her head. Not yet. I'm waiting for the right moment. A pause. What about you? Does Amelia know that you know? No. I've been processing. I took a drink from my own glass, barely tasting the wine. Part of me wants to just walk away without a word. Another part wants to make them face what they've done. They should face it, Lila said with sudden intensity. They don't get to just move on without consequences. Without seeing what they've destroyed. The vehemence in her voice resonated with something dark and hurt within me. Yes, they should see the wreckage they'd created. They should stand in the ruins of the lives they'd so carelessly demolished. And suddenly, I knew exactly how to make that happen. The plan materialized in my mind with architectural precision over the next 2 days. The house, our supposed forever home, was complete enough to host a small dinner, and the irony of using the space I had designed for our future as the setting for our ending felt fitting. During those intervening days, I maintained a facade of normalcy around Amelia that surprised even me. I moved through our shared spaces methodically, saying the right things at the right moments while internally calculating every variable of what was to come. The contractor says we can do a small dinner at the house this weekend, I told Amelia over breakfast. Nothing fancy, we'll need to bring chairs and use folding tables, but I thought it might be nice to christen the space. Amelia looked up from her phone with genuine excitement. That would be wonderful. Who should we invite? I was thinking just Marcus and Lila, I replied, watching her expression carefully. They've been so supportive throughout the building process. Something flickered across her face, uncertainty, perhaps even panic, before her social instincts took over. Perfect. I'll text Lila today. Actually, I already mentioned it to Marcus when he called about that property near the river, I lied smoothly. They're both available Saturday evening. Saturday arrived with perfect early autumn weather. I spent the morning at the house, setting up the makeshift dining area in what would eventually be our great room. The space faced west, with floor-to-ceiling windows framing the lake. On a side table, my laptop connected to a portable projector aimed at the largest empty wall. A slideshow of house design cycled on screen, interspersed with photos of Amelia and me from happier times. Amelia arrived mid-afternoon to help with final preparations. She brought flowers, candles, proper napkins, all the touches that transformed the sterile space into something welcoming. As she moved around the room, humming softly, I wondered if she felt any guilt whatsoever. This is going to be amazing, she said, adjusting a centerpiece. I can already imagine what it will be like when we're actually living here. The plural pronoun landed heavily. We. Us. Our. Words that no longer held meaning. Marcus and Lila arrived precisely at 6, bearing expensive wine and insincere smiles. Marcus embraced Amelia a beat too long while Lila caught my eye with a look of grim determination. She had dressed for battle in a sleek black dress, her makeup immaculate, her posture rigid with restrained anger. The house is stunning, Ethan, Marcus said, clapping me on the shoulder like we were still friends. You've outdone yourself. Thanks, I replied, accepting the wine he offered. Years of planning went into this place. Every detail considered. Nothing left to chance. The next hour unfolded with excruciating normalcy. We drank wine, ate the catered Italian food, and discussed safe topics. Beneath this civilized veneer, tension crackled. Lila spoke rarely, observing Marcus and Amelia with detached interest. I played the role of gracious host while mentally counting down to the moment I had orchestrated. When we had finished eating, I stood and raised my glass. A toast, I announced. To new beginnings. And to truth, wherever it leads us. Marcus shifted uncomfortably while Amelia looked at me with a puzzled smile. Only Lila met my gaze directly, silently acknowledging what was coming. Speaking of truth, I continued, setting down my glass, I promised a slideshow of the design process for this house. It's been quite a journey. I moved to my laptop and clicked to start the presentation. The first few slides were exactly what everyone expected: architectural renderings, material samples, construction photos showing the progression from foundation to finishing. The foundation is the most crucial part of any structure, I explained, my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. Without integrity there, nothing built above can withstand pressure. I advanced through slides showing Amelia and me in happier times. This house was designed for a future I believed in. For promises I thought were unbreakable. But sometimes what we build isn't what we think it is. Another click. Sometimes the foundation is compromised from within. The next slide appeared, and the room fell absolutely silent. There on the wall, enlarged to unmistakable clarity, was the photo Marcus had sent Amelia. The two of them on the deck of the lake house, wrapped around each other beneath a star-filled sky. The caption still attached, "That night under the stars," thinking of it now. Amelia gasped, her wineglass slipping from her fingers and shattering on the newly finished hardwood floor. Time seemed to slow as the image burned on the wall before us. The shattered glass at Amelia's feet sparkled under the recessed lighting I had so carefully planned for this space. Marcus froze mid-sip, his eyes darting between me and evidence projected for all to see. Lila straightened in her chair, a bitter smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "What is this?" Amelia finally managed, her voice barely audible. Her complexion had gone ashen, hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the table. I clicked through to the next slide, another screenshot of their conversations. Then another. And another. Each more incriminating than the last. I had curated them carefully, choosing messages that revealed not just their physical betrayal but their emotional one as well. The mockery of me. The planning behind my back. The calculated deception. "This," I said evenly, "is what you've been building while I've been building this house." The steadiness of my voice surprised even me. Quite an architectural feat, constructing such an elaborate deception. Marcus recovered first, slipping into the smooth confidence that had probably helped him convince my wife to betray me. "Ethan, there's clearly a misunderstanding here." "Is there?" I interrupted, advancing to a slide showing a hotel receipt in his name from a date when Amelia had claimed to be visiting her mother. "Am I misunderstanding this? Or this?" Another click revealed their text message planning for that particular rendezvous. Amelia stood suddenly, knocking her chair backward. "You went through my phone? You invaded my privacy?" Her voice climbed higher with each question, indignation masking guilt. "Privacy," I repeated, the word tasting bitter. "Is that really your concern right now? Not the fact that you've been sleeping with our friend? Not the fact that you've been lying to me for months while I designed and built what I thought was our future?" Lila, who had remained silent through the initial reveal, now turned toward Marcus. "Don't bother denying it," she said coolly. "I've known for weeks. I just wanted to see your face when you realized you weren't as clever as you thought." Marcus's expression hardened as he looked between his wife and me. "This is how you choose to handle it? Public humiliation? Real mature? Public?" I laughed, the sound hollow. "There are 4 people here, Marcus. The 4 people most affected by what you two did. Hardly public." I gestured around the empty house. "Though these walls have certainly witnessed enough lies already, haven't they?" Amelia had begun to cry, mascara tracking down her flushed cheeks. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered. "It just did. I was lonely. You were always working, always thinking about this house, about the future, never about the present. Never about me." Her attempt to shift blame ignited something inside me. "So this is my fault? I worked hard to build something for us, and that justifies betraying everything we promised each other?" "No," she admitted, looking down at the shards of glass surrounding her feet, an apt metaphor for what remained of our relationship. "But it wasn't just physical attraction. I felt seen by him in a way I hadn't with you in years." Marcus reached for Amelia's hand across the table, a gesture of solidarity that made Lila inhale sharply. "We never meant to hurt either of you," he said, attempting contrition. "That's the problem with architects and builders," I replied, closing my laptop as the final image, them laughing together at what appeared to be an inside joke, faded from the wall. "We understand that intention means nothing if the result is structural failure." Lila stood, gathering her purse with deliberate calm. Marcus, I've emptied our joint accounts and left the papers on your desk. My lawyer will contact yours tomorrow. She turned to me with unexpected gentleness. Thank you for having the courage to do this. I couldn't have managed it alone. Marcus's face contorted with shock. You've what? You can't legally. Actually, I can, she interrupted. You should read the terms of our prenuptial agreement more carefully. Infidelity has consequences. The realization of what was happening seemed to finally penetrate Marcus's confidence. His financial empire, built on carefully leveraged investments and constant cash flow, would topple without access to their joint resources. His expression shifted from disbelief to panic as he turned to Amelia, perhaps seeking assurance that at least he hadn't lost everything. Amelia, however, was staring at me. What happens now? She asked, her voice small. I looked around the house that was supposed to be our haven, the precise angles, the thoughtful spaces, the deliberate choices, and felt a curious detachment. Now I finish this house, sell it to the highest bidder, and move on with my life. Without me, she clarified, though it wasn't a question. Without you, I confirmed, surprised by how final the words felt once spoken aloud. Some foundations can't be repaired once they've been compromised. 3 weeks passed like a fever dream. I threw myself into completing the house, working alongside contractors from dawn until dusk. The physical labor provided relief from the constant replay of that dinner party in my mind. Amelia had moved most of her things out of our apartment by the time I returned that night. She left a note saying she was staying with her sister. No apology. No explanation beyond what she had already offered. Just the practical details of a life unraveling. Marcus and Lila's divorce made rounds in our social circle. His financial troubles mounted as she followed through on her promise to contest every asset. Several mutual friends called to express their sympathy, their shock, their support. I answered few of these calls, preferring the silence of the empty apartment or the rhythmic sounds of construction at the house. The house. I couldn't bring myself to call it home anymore. It was just a structure now, beautiful, thoughtfully designed, but hollow at its core. Much like the marriage it was meant to contain. I was inspecting the finished stonework around the fireplace when I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched Amelia's car approach. She parked and sat motionless behind the wheel for several minutes before finally emerging. Even from a distance, I could see how much weight she had lost. Her clothes hung loosely, and her normally immaculate hair was pulled back in a hasty ponytail. The front door opened without a knock. Hello? Her voice echoed through the empty rooms. In here, I called back, not moving from my position by the fireplace. Amelia appeared in the doorway, hesitating before stepping fully into the great room. Her eyes traveled over the completed space, taking in the details she had once been so excited about: the reclaimed wood ceiling beams, the custom-built shelving, the views of the lake through walls of glass. It's finished, she said softly. It's everything you said it would be. Almost, I replied, running my hand along the smooth stone of the fireplace. Final inspections are next week. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. Once, we could talk for hours about nothing important. Now, with everything important hanging in the balance, words failed us both. I spoke with a divorce attorney, she finally said. He said given the circumstances, I shouldn't contest whatever terms you propose. I nodded, unsurprised by this practical approach. Amelia had always been pragmatic, even when her emotions ran high. I've drawn up something fair. You'll keep your inheritance, your personal accounts. We'll split the shared assets. I'll keep this property. And sell it, she added, remembering my declaration from that night. Maybe, I conceded. I haven't decided. Amelia wandered to the window, gazing out at the lake. The afternoon light caught the tears on her cheeks. Marcus and I aren't together, if that matters. It doesn't, I replied honestly. What you do now is your business. She turned back to face me, eyes red-rimmed but dry now. Can I ask you something? Something that's been eating at me since that night? I gestured for her to continue, steeling myself for accusations or justifications. Did you ever have feelings for Lila? The question emerged barely above a whisper. I always suspected, the way you talked with her, how comfortable you seemed. That's part of why I. She trailed off, unable to complete the thought. The question caught me entirely off guard. Lila? No. Never. She was your friend's wife. Our friend's wife. Amelia shook her head slowly. I was so convinced. The way you looked at her sometimes. How you always remembered little details about her preferences. I thought maybe you were having an emotional affair, even if nothing physical happened. So that justified you actually having an affair? The incredulity in my voice bounced off the empty walls. No, she admitted, wrapping her arms around herself. But in my mind, I was evening the score for something I believed was happening. I wanted to hurt you first. The revelation struck me with unexpected force. All this destruction based on her unfounded suspicions. All this pain because she had convinced herself of a betrayal that never existed. I didn't love Lila, I said finally. Not until you gave me a reason to consider it. Amelia flinched as if I had struck her. And now? Now nothing, I replied. Lila and I talked after everything happened. We both agreed that anything between us would be built on the wrong foundation. We're both too broken right now to offer each other anything healthy. Amelia nodded, approaching me with tentative steps. For what it's worth, I am sorry. Not just for being caught. For betraying you. For destroying what we had. Her apology, sincere though it might have been, arrived too late to salvage what we had lost. The distance between us measured not in feet but in fractured trust. I accepted the manila envelope she extended, knowing it contained signed divorce papers. I know, I said simply. But sometimes sorry isn't enough to rebuild what's been torn down. 6 months later, I stood in the empty great room one final time. The house had sold above asking price to a young family enchanted by the lake views and thoughtful design. The wife, an artist with bright eyes and an infectious laugh, had gushed about the natural light in what would have been my office. The husband, a doctor with gentle hands and a calm demeanor, had appreciated the structural integrity and attention to detail. Their 2 small children had raced through the empty rooms, their footsteps and laughter bringing life to spaces that had only known tension and betrayal. Watching them, I felt the weight lifting. This house deserved a family who would fill it with joy rather than regret. The divorce had finalized with minimal conflict. Amelia accepted the terms without protest, perhaps as penance or perhaps simply to expedite her freedom. Our shared friends had initially attempted to remain neutral, but social gravity eventually pulled them into separate orbits. Some aligned with her, others with me. Most simply drifted away, uncomfortable with the messiness of our unraveling. I found I didn't mind the smaller social circle. There was clarity in knowing who remained when the foundation crumbled. Marcus had not fared well in the aftermath. His business partners, catching wind of his ethical flexibility, began scrutinizing their arrangements more carefully. Several investments collapsed under the weight of this new scrutiny. Last I heard, he had moved to another state to rebuild what remained of his reputation. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only a distant acknowledgement that actions create ripples beyond what we can anticipate. Lila and I maintained occasional contact, a coffee every few months, texts on birthdays, careful to keep appropriate distance while acknowledging our unique understanding of each other's pain. She had started a small interior design business, channeling her creativity into helping others create homes that reflected their authentic selves. There remained between us the possibility of something more, but neither of us rushed toward it. We both understood the importance of stable ground. As for me, I sold my ownership stake in the architectural firm and started a smaller practice focusing on sustainable residential projects. My new apartment occupied the top floor of a converted warehouse downtown, open concept, industrial elements softened by natural materials, walls lined with books instead of photographs. I embraced the freedom of designing just for myself, arranging furniture based on function rather than convention, leaving spaces intentionally empty until inspiration suggested their purpose. I locked the front door of the lake house one last time, pocketing the keys I would soon hand over to the real estate agent. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the driveway as I walked toward my car. A light breeze carried the scent of pine and lake water, the natural perfume that had first attracted me to this property. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine the parallel life where Amelia and I occupied this space together, hosting dinner parties on the deck, watching sunsets from the master bedroom, growing old within these carefully constructed walls. The vision arrived without the sharp pain that once accompanied it. Progress, not perfection. My phone buzzed with a text message from Claire, a landscape architect I had been dating for the past 2 months. Still on for dinner tonight, followed by a smiling emoji. Our relationship progressed slowly, deliberately, two people cautious after past injuries, testing each step before committing weight. I replied with a simple affirmative and started the engine. Driving away from the house for the final time, I reflected on what remained after everything had fallen apart. I had lost the future I had planned but gained a clearer understanding of my present. Architectural training teaches you to plan for contingencies, to build structures that withstand unexpected forces. Yet no blueprint or calculation could have prepared me for the collapse of trust that toppled my marriage. The most valuable lesson emerged from the rubble: foundations matter more than facades. I once believed that careful planning could prevent disaster, that enough attention to detail could secure happiness. Now I understood that life often ignored even the most meticulous designs. The challenge was not preventing collapse but developing the resilience to rebuild afterward. Trust was indeed something you lost piece by piece, with each deception eating away at stability until nothing could stand upon it. But healing followed a similar pattern, incremental, deliberate, one carefully placed stone after another. As the house disappeared in my rearview mirror, I recalled the words that had haunted me since Discovery Day. I introduced them. I trusted both of them. And still, I was the one who apologized. The bitter irony no longer stung as it once had. I had apologized, not for their betrayal, but for my own blindness to what was happening around me. That apology had been necessary, not to them, but to myself, an acknowledgement that moving forward required accepting my own role in the collapse. The highway stretched before me, leading back toward the city and the new life I was building, not according to precise blueprints this time, but with flexibility, with awareness, with an appreciation for the present rather than fixation on the future. Some foundations could not be repaired once compromised. But new ones could always be laid, stronger than before, built on the solid ground of hard-earned wisdom.